Hello, I'm Greg, and my partner Lorenzo, who's going to be on the other end of this PowerPoint to explain the back half of it. You'll see him later on in the video. But our journal article was Preventing the Onset of Major Depressive Disorder, a meta-analytic review of psychological interventions. So we're going to take, hopefully you can follow along. I know it's supposed to be on Panopto, but for some reason it's given us trouble. So we decided to do it this way. I think it was the easiest, and just, to get turned in so y'all can view it before it's for the whole week, I guess. This was the best way. So I did give Dr. Long our PowerPoint, so if you'd like to follow along, please go ahead and do that. If not, that's okay. You can just listen to us talk. So we gave you all a little roadmap. I know it looks long, but we'll go through it pretty quickly. So key terms and concepts, just to give you what you're going to be looking at, what you're going to be hearing throughout the PowerPoint. Some background info, some statistical evidence of MDD, the types of prevention methods within the study, quality assessment and analysis. And my partner will pick up on results, included studies, incidence ratios, subgroup analysis, discussion, and future research for this disorder. So the terms and concepts that were listed were depression, disability-adjusted life years, major depressive disorder, prevention, protective factors, prodromal disease stages, incidence ratios, intervention, meta-analysis, and numbers needed to treat. So just some numbers to throw at you for people suffering with MDD. 150 million people worldwide experience this depression over the course of their life. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 8 men. Usually that's the people it affects. And MDD, which is sad, is one of the leaders in premature death. That's pretty heavy, I know, for a lot of people out there. We got to shed some light on seeing what's really happening here. So unfortunately, another thing is it's going to be the projected leading cause by 2030. All these disease burdens according to the measurements of disability-adjusted life years, and by 2030 it will be the leading cause of this. To further reduce this, we believe that the influx of new cases, can't even read their handwriting. So if we can reduce the influx of new cases through these prevention methods, I think a lot of those numbers will begin to drop, which is a good sign of hope for this. We should look at prevention rather than treatment. I mean, it's like any other disease. When you feel like a cold coming on, either take a Z-Pack or drink orange juice before it gets too bad. So being able to not dig that hole too deep before you're too deep. So I think that's the scope of this, is to see what can we do before, how can we be proactive about this. And I thought that was really interesting while reading this article. So types of prevention: universal prevention, focus on general population, regardless of risk status. So it's very broad, just kind of like casting a wide net of people, and then selective prevention is more specific, very for certain groups or subgroups who are at higher risk than the average. And indicated prevention focuses on those with prodromal symptoms or biological markers to mental disorders, but do not meet the full criteria of the actual diagnosis. That was a little bit harder to understand, but researching and reading throughout the article, we were able to understand a little bit better. Universal is usually not as used as often because it's not super effective, but it gets the numbers. We're able to see people. It's just not really effective, I guess. By viewing NTTs and NNTs, it shows those who should reduce the intervention to prevent new cases. And then the more cases you have gives a better understanding of the subfields for prevention in greater detail and more statistical power, i.e. postpartum depression or prevention in school. So going into those subgroups there. So the methods, prevention is defined as reducing the incidence of new MDD cases. Those chosen in here weren't meeting the full criteria, which is an interesting take on this. But I can see they wanted numbers. They wanted as much as they could. So those include different types of prevention, those focusing on preventing depression disorders after a significant life event, such as postnatal depression. It focuses on other various types and just big significant life events that people have gone through that may have been triggers that led to the either just mild depression or MDD. So our quality assessment, we have sequence generation, allocation concealment, binding of outcome assessors, and incomplete outcome data. And basically those, for sequence generation, it says used to generate the allocation sequence, which allows assessment on on whether it should produce comparable groups. Sorry, I do apologize. It should produce comparable groups. For allocation and concealment, used to see if intervention allocations were foreseeable in advance of during enrollment, binding of outcome assessors, typo there. Used to blind personnel as well as study participants to knowledge of which participants were allocated, and then incomplete outcome data, methods used to see whether all randomized participants were used in analysis. So yeah. So for the analysis part, first calculated incidence for developing a depressive disorder, an intervention compound to control group. Basically, and then the two subsets under that were the calculated means of those incident rates and random effects model. And then we'll talk about no heterogeneity, low, moderate, and high levels of incident rates. So basically, the random effects model is to assume that the included studies are drawn from participants that may differ from each other. So you may have one individual, a certain disorder, or how far they've progressed in their depression compared to someone who isn't as severe. So it's almost like a different risk factor, and understanding that those differences between them. And so for the no heterogeneity, low, moderate, and high levels of incidence rates, for none, obviously it's about 0 percentile, or just percentage. 25 to 49% is considered low. 50 to 74% is moderate, and 75% or above is called a high risk, or high incidence rates, which is pretty like, those are big numbers. If you think of like the ABC, D and F, 75% is a C. So you're looking at over the over the average. You're looking at 25% that are high, compared to the first 25. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, so that's pretty much the analysis on this and where we're going to go with that. So I'm passing to my partner Lorenzo, who will carry on results and talking about the different articles of criteria and the viable work for the study. Thank you, and enjoy his part.